The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. They toiled day and night under the scorching sun, their bodies weary from the relentless labor. The Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, had imposed harsh conditions on them, forcing them to build his grand monuments and cities. The Israelites' cries for relief went unheard and their suffering seemed endless. For many years they endured this brutal existence. The Pharaoh's taskmasters were ruthless, driving the Israelites to work harder and harder. The people longed for freedom, but it seemed like an impossible dream. They were trapped in a cycle of oppression with no hope in sight. The Pharaoh was a powerful king, revered and feared by his subjects. He ruled with an iron fist and his word was law. The Israelites were just a means to an end for him, a source of cheap labor to fuel his grand ambitions. He showed no mercy and his heart was hardened against their plight. But amidst this darkness there was a glimmer of hope. Moses, a man chosen by God, emerged as a beacon of light for the Israelites. He was a humble shepherd, but God had a greater purpose for him. God spoke to Moses through a burning bush, revealing his plan to free the Israelites from their bondage. God told Moses to go to the Pharaoh and demand the release of his people. It was a daunting task, but Moses had faith in God's promise. He knew that with God's guidance, he could lead the Israelites to freedom. Moses prayed for strength and wisdom, and he set out on his mission with determination. When Moses stood before the Pharaoh, he spoke with conviction. "Let my people go," he declared. The Pharaoh was taken aback by Moses' boldness, but he was not willing to lose his valuable workforce. He dismissed Moses' request, refusing to acknowledge the power of the God who had sent him. The Pharaoh's refusal only strengthened Moses' resolve. He warned the Pharaoh of the consequences of his stubbornness. "If you do not let the Israelites go, God will send plagues upon Egypt," Moses cautioned. But the Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not relent. Moses' warning was clear and dire. The plagues would be a demonstration of God's power and a punishment for the Pharaoh's cruelty. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown between the will of a mighty king and the divine plan of God. The fate of the Israelites hung in the balance, and their journey to freedom was about to begin. The plagues came. They descended upon Egypt like a relentless storm, one after another, each more devastating than the last. Locusts swarmed the fields, devouring every green thing in sight. Frogs covered the land, invading homes and disrupting daily life. The sky turned dark and ominous, a harbinger of the suffering to come. They caused much suffering in Egypt. The once fertile land was now barren, and the people were in distress. Crops were destroyed, homes were damaged, and the natural disasters left the Egyptians in a state of despair. The plagues were a clear sign that something had to change. Finally, the Pharaoh agreed to let the Israelites go. After witnessing the relentless plagues and the suffering of his people, he had no choice but to relent. The Israelites, who had been enslaved for generations, were finally given the chance to leave. They gathered their belongings and prepared for the journey ahead. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. With a strong and determined heart, he guided them through the wilderness. The journey was long and arduous, but the hope of freedom kept them moving forward. They trusted Moses to lead them to a better future. They traveled for many days. The desert was vast and unforgiving, but the Israelites pressed on. They walked through the sandy terrain, carrying their belongings and their hopes for a new life. The journey tested their endurance and their faith. They came to the edge of the Red Sea. The sight of the vast, deep waters filled them with awe and trepidation. They had reached a natural barrier that seemed impossible to cross. The sea stretched out before them, a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. It was a vast and deep sea. The Israelites were trapped. With the sea in front of them and the desert behind, they had nowhere to go. Anxiety and fear began to spread among the crowd as they realized the gravity of their situation. Behind them, the Pharaoh changed his mind. His anger and pride got the better of him. He could not bear the thought of losing his slaves and the labor they provided. He gathered his advisors and ordered his army to prepare for pursuit. He wanted his slaves back. The Pharaoh's desire to reclaim the Israelites drove him to mobilize his forces. Soldiers marched in unison and chariots were readied for the chase. The Egyptian army was a formidable force, and they were determined to bring the Israelites back to Egypt. He sent his army to chase after the Israelites. The sound of chariots and marching soldiers filled the air as the Egyptian army advanced through the desert. They were relentless in their pursuit, driven by the Pharaoh's command and their own desire for victory. The Israelites saw the Egyptian army coming. They were very afraid. Panic spread through the crowd as they realized the danger they were in. They looked to Moses for guidance, hoping for a miracle to save them from the approaching threat. The Israelites were trapped between the sea and the army. They cried out to Moses. They thought they would be captured or killed. Moses remained calm. He trusted in God. God spoke to Moses. He told him to raise his staff over the sea. He told him not to be afraid. Moses listened to God. He raised his staff over the sea. A strong wind began to blow. The wind blew all through the night. The wind parted the waters of the sea. The water formed two walls. There was a path between the walls of water. The path was dry land. The Israelites were amazed. They had never seen anything like it before. They knew it was a miracle. God had parted the sea for them. Moses led the Israelites onto the path. They began to cross the Red Sea on dry land. Section 5. A safe passage. The Israelites walked through the sea all night. The walls of water protected them on both sides. They were safe from the Egyptian army. The Egyptians could not cross the sea. They had to wait for the Israelites to reach the other side. They watched in anger and frustration. The Israelites continued walking until morning. They were getting closer to the other side. They could see the shore in the distance. Section 6. The Egyptians are defeated. As the sun rose, the Pharaoh's army decided to follow. They thought that they could still capture the Israelites. They rode their chariots onto the path. The Egyptian army followed the Israelites into the sea. They thought the path would remain open. But God had other plans. As the Egyptian army reached the middle of the sea, the walls of water collapsed. The water crashed down upon them. The Egyptian army was destroyed. Section 7. Reaching the other side. The Israelites were safe on the other side of the Red Sea. They watched as the waters closed over the Egyptian army. They knew that God had saved them. They were free from slavery at last. They thanked Moses for leading them to safety. They thanked God for performing such a great miracle. The Israelites were tired but happy. They had faced a great danger. They had witnessed the power of God. Section 8. The Miracle of the Red Sea. The parting of the Red Sea is a famous story. It is one of the most dramatic and awe-inspiring events recorded in the Bible. This miraculous event is a cornerstone of faith for many, symbolizing the power of divine intervention in times of great need. It is a story about faith and courage. The Israelites, led by Moses, found themselves trapped between the Red Sea and the pursuing Egyptian army. With no apparent escape, their faith was put to the ultimate test. They had to trust in something greater than themselves. It is a story about the power of God. In their moment of desperation, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and God parted the waters, creating a path of dry land for the Israelites to cross. This display of divine power was both a testament to God's might and a beacon of hope for the faithful. The Israelites trusted in God. Despite their fear and uncertainty, they followed Moses into the parted sea, believing that God would protect them. Their unity and collective faith were crucial in this moment of crisis. They followed Moses even when they were afraid. God rewarded their faith. As they reached the other side, the waters returned, engulfing the Egyptian army and ensuring the safety of the Israelites. This miraculous escape was a clear sign of God's favor and protection. He saved them from the Egyptian army. The parting of the Red Sea was not just a physical deliverance, but also a spiritual one. It reinforced the belief that with faith, even the most insurmountable obstacles can be overcome. The miracle of the Red Sea is a reminder that God is always with us. In our own lives, we may face challenges that seem impossible to overcome. Yet this story teaches us that with faith, perseverance, and trust in a higher power, we can find a way through. He will help us overcome any obstacle. Just as the Israelites were guided to safety, we too can find guidance and strength in our moments of need. The key is to remain steadfast in our faith and to believe that we are never alone in our struggles. We just need to trust in Him. The story of the Red Sea is a powerful testament to the enduring strength of faith and the boundless possibilities that come with believing in something greater than ourselves. It is a timeless reminder that miracles can happen when we place our trust in the divine. Section 9. A new beginning. The Israelites were free from slavery. They could now start a new life. They were heading towards the Promised Land. This was a land where they could live in freedom and peace. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but the Israelites knew that God was with them. They had seen His power at the Red Sea. They were ready to face any challenge. They knew that God would lead them to the Promised Land.